I love to see the choir when they're enjoying singing a song. The whole body language changes, and you ought to be smiling when you're singing, it seems like to me sometimes. I'm just glad to see them when they're enjoying themselves. Revelation Station is taking off. Those who are going have already left. If you've never toured the church and seen all that there is going on in the church, make sure you do that. This church is much, much bigger than people think it is. All right. We started out last month talking about stewardship. And we started talking about various aspects of stewardship that didn't necessarily deal with money. Because stewardship is about more than money. But it is about money too. Money is important. Money helps us to do a lot of things that we might not otherwise be able to accomplish. And today I want to talk about finances. I want to talk about finances. How many of you are in the financial position you want to be in? Raise your hand. Not everybody at the same time. How many of you admit you could have done better with what the Lord has blessed you with? Raise your hand. Yes. Yes. The Bible talks about money over and over again. It's a very important topic. The reason it's so important is because our lives intersect with finances all the time. God has an interest in us succeeding in all of the blessings that he's given us. And somehow we all feel that we have the how to deal with money all the time. The truth of the matter is, many of us have never been properly taught how to deal with money. This is the truth of it. Many of us could have stood just a few more classes on how to deal with it. Many of us approach retirement completely unprepared. Sometimes it's because you haven't had enough income coming in, but a lot of times it's because you haven't utilized properly the income that you did have coming in. I heard somebody say something one day that was offensive when I heard it the first time. It was talking about how we deal with money in our community. And I was taken aback when they said it, and I wondered, do people really think that? And they say that in our community, we pay for what we want and we beg for what we need. Wow. I was shocked when I heard, and then I thought about it. There's some truth to that. Who in here hasn't been approached by a relative or a friend or somebody because they had something going on, somebody to get turned off or something, and the first thing that came to your mind was how you saw them wasting some money before you gave it to them? Who hasn't been approached under those circumstances? And you say to yourself, you might not say it to them, but you say to yourself, you could have done better. Yeah, we're judgmental about that kind of thing. But the truth of the matter is, we probably all have been there. We've all made a choice to get something we wanted, and we have forsaken something we absolutely needed to take care of. In fact, some of us, our standard of money management is based on that. I mean, we go month to month without having any real plan on how to deal with our money. And it's not that God doesn't put you in a place to get the resources. It's just that when you get it, it seems like you've been withheld from having a good time so long that I'm just going to have to go and break this off and get me, and then I'll deal with the consequences of it later. Yeah, don't raise your hand, but I know somebody in here has had their lights turned off. They're about to get put out. Couldn't buy gas. And listen, I've been there. I've been there. Yeah, you go home, open the door, and hit the light switch, and it don't do nothing. It's like it laughs at you. I've been there. Yeah. In fact, I tell people all the time, you send somebody to college, it's their job to figure out how to get out. I do believe that. I believe there's enough resources, if they're really about it, they can figure out how to get out of school. You can figure out how to get some money, how to get a scholarship, how to get a work study job. You can figure out something. And I found I came into myself and I had to figure the plan out, how to get out. One part of the plan was not calling home. All right, that wasn't gonna help. That wasn't gonna help. I had to figure out what was going on at Tuskegee, and I can tell you now, I had a $200 work study check. Too much of it went to Bill to handle what I was supposed to handle. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Yeah, you get work study check once a month. Yeah, $50 was gone that day. My rent wasn't but $100 a month. It was hard, man. I ain't that old. The rent was my rent. Our rent collectively was more than that. My part of it was $100 a month, but I wasted a lot. I wasted a lot, and I regret it. And I took some of those same habits into our marriage. We've had so many arguments. Can I get a witness?
Ooh, Lord Jesus. Ooh, Lord.
Over money management. So many arguments where I was right and she was wrong. That's not true. That's so not true. No. Oh, now you were just testifying a little bit too much there. Yeah. So many arguments over how I handle money. The worst thing she could come in there and tell me was, well, my daddy used to do such. Oh, what? Your daddy? That wasn't going to help the argument at all. But in truth, she was right. She's a much better manager of resources than I am. She is. Not most women. We ain't going that way. If you ain't been a man, you can't say what most women do now. I'm not going with that, Sister Jenkins. No. She is. I don't know about every other she, but she is, and I can go from that. Anyway, I want to talk to you. You done got me down a rabbit hole over here. No dialogue, monologue. If we can correct some of the errors that we have, then I tell you this, I'll say this, in truth, I learned some of the bad habits about money management from my mama. I did. Watching her, she was a rob Peter to pay Paul kind of person. And a lot of whole times that was the way it had to happen. And a lot of times that happened because there was no balance in the house when it came to handling the resources. You can't live out of two pots. You got to have a single pot to draw from. I tell all the couples, and there's a whole lot of couples in this room that I've counseled, all right, that you have to have a commonality of resources to take care of the common issues of the house. That doesn't mean you can't have your own little piggy bank. But you ought to take care of stuff together. And that's essential to keeping peace in the house. And I hope I've imparted some of the wisdom. This is wisdom. All right. I earned this. I'm trying to keep them. I'm trying to keep them from having some of the same problems that we had when it came to being married. And so I'm not telling them what I did. I'm telling them what I wish I had done. And that helps to move things on a little bit better. But if you're going to learn how to manage money, then the Bible is a great place for you to go. That's why if you've never taken a Dave Ramsey money management program, then I recommend it. It's great. We've had one here at the church. We may have one again here at the church, but it gives you great financial principles on how to deal with resources. But there are a whole lot of money mistakes, and I'm going to go through them today, and hopefully it'll help you to be better when it comes to managing money. The underlying scripture I want to use is Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. Goes right into it. Solomon, who had more money, more stuff than anybody in the world, tells us that one of the principles we ought to use is honor the Lord by giving him the first part of your income. Honor the Lord by giving him the first part of your income. And he says, then your barns will be full and your wine barrels will overflow with new wine. First thing you ought to do is learn how to honor God. That would have helped me out a whole lot if I had known that, instead of just honoring myself and my own wants and desires. So let's look at some money mistakes we make. Money mistakes that we make with the resources we get. The first is we make the mistake of measuring our self-worth by our net worth. All right? We measure our self-worth by our net worth. Proverbs 28 and 11 reads, rich people may think they are wise, but a poor person with discernment can see right through them. Proverbs 28 and 11 dispels the notion that just because you're rich, you're smart. Just because your job pays a good salary doesn't mean you know everything. All right? Many people with money are wise. But now if we go by how much you have, then that completely confuses why Jesus was broke. All right? Jesus owned very little while he was on earth. But every day he got what he needed. Every day he had somewhere to sleep. Every day he ate. He had clothes when he needed them. And the Bible gives us clear indication that Jesus was the wisest man who ever lived. And so how is it that one who is so wise had so little resources? All right? That's something you need to consider when you start looking at, especially for young folk, when you start looking at the jobs you want to do. A lot of kids, the first thing they'll ask you is, how much does that pay? And I can tell you right now that there are a lot of high-paying jobs where folks are absolutely miserable. Miserable doing those jobs. They are not only high-paying, they are high-stress. They're doing jobs that folk might sound fun, but you really don't want to do the job. All right? But they pay you a whole lot of money. Having a lot of money can inflate your ego too. But God never intended for money to be used as a measurement of how important we are. You can tell we have flipped this thing completely upside down. There was a time when folk who played football just played football. Now we've elevated them to being heroes. Just because they play, maybe I should say sports. They're heroes. Some of them still aren't wise. They just make a lot of money because that's the industry they are a part of. They make a lot of money. As a matter of fact, I read this week, it was shocking to me that a player had signed on with a scout team and was signed to the league minimum. The league minimum paid him $26,000 a week. A week before taxes. The league minimum. Now, you got to understand, $26,000 a week is nothing in a league where there are folk probably making $200,000 a week or more, depending on the contract they have. And so by NFL standards, you are poor if you only make the league minimum. And still, when it comes to everyday living, you know, there's a little bubble those folks live in. When you get on the outside of that bubble and you realize that some folk don't make $26,000 a year, and they're making $26,000 a week, you got to have some sense. So answer this question. What would you do with it? Just in your everyday life, what would you do with $26,000 a week? You can't have but one house. You can't eat that much green acres. Well, you can have multiple houses, but you got to take care of them. You got to take care of them. You can have multiple cars, but you got to take care of them. Can't drive but one at a time, but you still got to take care of them. That means insurance, upkeep on all of them. And the way they're buying cars, they're buying Maseratis. So I can't take a Maserati to Mr. Collins over there. I can't take it, and Mr. Collins is humming or doing something. I mean, he's just going to look at me and laugh. You got to take that to the Maserati dealership for them to do what they do, and they're going to, you know going in there, it's going to be X amount of dollars for them to even look at it. What would you do with $26,000 a week? Everybody always says, I would. Can I tell you something? It's hard spending money righteously. I read Shaquille O'Neal's said that all the money he needed to live on, he earned while he was playing ball. Hear me now. Now, Shaq's been out of the league now for how long? About 10 years? He said all he needed to live on for him and his family for the rest of his life, he earned while he was playing ball. So that means that everything he's earned since then, he doesn't need it for his living. He said, I'm just putting away stuff for my children's future. Now imagine that. Because Shaq makes in endorsements about $30 million a year. So all of that, he doesn't need it for his house. He doesn't need it. I mean, we know from some paperwork that was filed that Shaq had $26,000. It was a cable bill that was like $18,000. It was crazy. A cable bill. What I'm trying to tell you is when you make all these resources, it supports a lifestyle that requires all these resources. It eats it up as fast as you make it, and that's why when you get out of the league or get out of whatever, it goes away so fast. That's why so many of them come out and are broke. Because they're still trying to live that same lifestyle. And so if you measure your self-worth by your net worth, when you no longer have a net worth that is high, your self-esteem goes low. And that's what happens to a whole lot of them. They go into depression because they can't hang no more. They can't go and do things. But God never intended for us to think that way. All right? If you want to know how truly valuable you are, then you need to look at something that has a much higher value, and I suggest you try looking at a spiritual standpoint. I suggest you start looking toward the cross. That's my suggestion. But a lot of people don't know Casanova to look to the cross. And so they struggle. And some people in here have problems that they think would be better if they just had more money. You think a little more money would solve all your problems. And to be sure, it might solve some of your problems. But money can hide a multitude of sins. If you got a drinking problem while you broke, you're going to have a bigger drinking problem when you got money. Oh yeah, it's going to just amplify the problem. And that's happened so many times. The word of God says, those who trust in riches will be ruined, but a good person will be healthy like a green leaf. If you trust in riches, those riches will absolutely run out. But a good person, Our emphasis ought to be on being good people, not being a rich person. This is so important in this media-focused society. You got to teach your children that money won't solve all their problems. Another Bible mistake we make, other than measuring our self-worth by our net worth, is by investing in get-rich-quick schemes over planning and hard work. Get-rich-quick schemes, hustling. Proverbs 21:5 says, the plans of hard-working people earn a profit, but those who act too quickly become poor. That's the New Century Version of the Bible. One of the biggest pipe dreams we have in the world is that we can earn a big profit by investing a little. You know it. It's on TV all the time. Infomercials, programs say you can get rich by flipping houses. You can buy this house for $500 and then sell it for $500,000. They will lead you to believe that you can do that. Ask anybody who held all those houses in 2009 what happened to all their investments. They got turned upside down. Most of them had to file bankruptcy because they had gotten caught up in that get-rich-quick scheme. Can you make money flipping houses? Yeah. But you got to have some resources before you go into it. If you were to go right now and renovate your own house, I assure you you're going to find some problems that you didn't anticipate finding. And so you know that's going to be amplified if you go find a house that's been abandoned or left for a while. You're going to spend a whole lot of money getting it up to speed. And a lot of time the money you spend getting it up to speed is not going to be worth the investment. All of us love to hear the stories of somebody that says, I made $100,000 last month and I only worked 5 hours. And the reason they're on the infomercial, can I let you in on a secret, is they want you to call in and invest in their system, and that's how they keep making money over and over again. Because you are going to invest your $1,000 or whatever in their program, and if they can get enough folk to do that, I mean, think about it. All you need is 500 folk who believe you. 500 folk who believe you and who send $1,000 in, and you don't have to work. They do it all for you. Don't throw away what God has given you by falling for get-rich-quick schemes. I'm going to tell you this, too. I'm just going out here and say it. That's a preacher in me, it's Andra in me, too. Everybody in Alabama, the folk are begging for a lottery to come. If the lottery was going to do the good that it was supposed to do, we probably have waited too late because every state around us already got a lottery. And every state around us is losing money in lotteries. They won't tell you that. They're declining revenues. And it's a tax. That's all it is. It's just a voluntary, because the folk who can ill afford to do it are the ones most likely to fund it. Rich folk don't play the lottery. They don't. They're not going to throw their money away in the lottery. It's folk who can ill afford to do it who play the lottery. God's plan is this: plan well, work hard, build wealth slowly. That's his plan. That's what gets you there. But not trying to get it overnight. Don't mess around with those get-rich-quick schemes. Wealth from get-rich-quick schemes quickly disappears. But wealth from hard work grows over time. I'll give you 2 examples. One, people who do win the lottery, the average millionaire is broke within 3 years after they win the lottery. And the reason why they're broke is because the money doesn't have the value of having earned it. And you frivolously spend it because it doesn't have any work or sweat equity in it. The same thing happens to other folk. Now I'm going to say this. A whole lot of folk get money because somebody dies and leaves them an inheritance. And you spend that money a whole lot quicker. It took mom and dad 60, 70 years to build that money up. And you get it overnight. And suddenly you're going to do everything you ever wanted to do in life. And before long, you're without the resources that you need, even though it took care of mom and them all their lives. And that's because you didn't put the sweat equity into it. It doesn't have the value. Heed God's word. Plan well. Work hard. Build wealth slowly. The trustworthy person will get a rich reward, but a person who wants quick riches will get into trouble. Greedy people try to get rich quick, but don't realize they're headed for poverty. It's Proverbs 28 and 20 and verse 22. The third mistake we make is wasteful spending. We spend money badly. This is my problem. All right? Sooner or later, we want to spend the money we make. After all, that's why God let us earn it, right? He let us earn money so that we can take care of the needs that we have. But we got to spend our money wisely for the things we need. You need to have a plan about how you spend your money. Thinking beyond the spending. How many of you know that you should never go grocery shopping when you're hungry? Anybody know that? You'll buy all sorts of stuff if you go grocery shopping when you're hungry. Yeah. I mean, listen, I didn't come up with this. A wise person came up with that. You just throwing stuff in the buggy. Just stuff you probably won't even eat later on. It just looks good. But the same is true also, not just in grocery shopping, but in other shopping. You can just go out buying clothes you never wore. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand right now, but how many of y'all got clothes in the closet with the tag still on? Don't raise your hand. Yeah. How many of y'all got clothes you bought hoping you could fit it? Knowing, ooh, this is sharp. And we say, ooh, this is so bad. But it's a 2. And I need a 12. But I'm going to get in it. I'm just going to go on by it, and the Lord will make a way. Somehow. Yeah. Every now, that's my inspiration. Just leave it hanging in the corner of the closet. Come on now. Wasteful spending. Wasteful spending. Don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. How many of y'all got more than 5 pair of boots? Don't raise your hand. More than 5 pair of boots or other shoes. I always hear this from women, that women have to buy seasonal shoes. That's always seasonal. Yeah. Yeah. Men don't have to buy seasonal shoes, I don't guess. Now, don't get me wrong. Men spend money wasteful too. Now, I'll give you that. Yeah, we buy shoes because they look good, but then we wear them one time and they pinch. Oh, they pinch, and I can't get them stretched out, and so we start shying away from them. So we got shoes sitting in there that we won't wear because they make our feet hurt. We spend too much money on shoes because men typically spend more money on shoes than women do. But I can't even say shoes would be the problem. How many men in here got more than 50 ties? 50 ties. Don't act like I'm not in your neighborhood now. You might not have boots, shoes, ties. How many of y'all got more than 25 pair of socks? Oh yeah, everybody wears socks. Or hose, or whatever. More than you need. I bet I can find, and your sock drawer probably won't even close. Wasteful spending, and keep it that way. Won't give it to somebody who could use it. It's just sinful. Proverbs 21 and 20 says, wise people's houses are full of the best foods and olive oil, but fools waste everything they have. The wise have wealth and luxury, but fools spend whatever they get. Every year, Congress does a watchdog. Whatever, various watchdog groups that come in, and they go in and explore all the spending that Congress has had, and then they scintillate us with different news stories about how this particular agency spent $200 on a toilet seat or something to show wasteful spending. But the truth of the matter is, we all need watchdogs. And if you know the Lord, you got a watchdog. You got the Holy Spirit who gives you discernment on what you need to wear, what you need to buy, what you need to have, and what you don't need to have. If you're being a good steward of what God has put you in charge of, then he will temper you on what you need to obtain. All right? Wasteful spending messes us all up. The fourth bad habit we have is cutting ethical corners. All right? Cutting ethical corners. That means we live and die by the hookup. By the hookup. Yeah. We know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody that got a computer brand new in the box. Brand new in the box for $100. And we run and get it, and to get the computer, it don't have no cables. You can't plug it in. You spend $100 on something that you can't do anything with. The child's so happy when you pull it out of the box, and then 2 months later, they ain't never been turned on because you went by the hookup, as opposed to paying a little bit more money, getting it legitimately, and being able to get it serviced when you're supposed to. Scripture, I'm just going to read some scripture to you. God hates cheating in the marketplace. Rigged scales are an outrage. It's Proverbs 20 and 23. Better to have little with godliness than to be rich and be dishonest. Proverbs 16 and 8. All right. The godly are directed by honesty. You have to have a moral code in your life. If you are a believer in Christ Jesus, people look at how you deal with things. Now you say, this is me, I won't even buy bootleg DVDs. I won't. They come in the barbershop all the time. Dude come in there, movie just premiered. Yesterday, he got the copy. He got the copy. The Mel Gibson ain't even made The Passion of Christ 2, but he already got the DVD on it. I mean, it's just, I believe that when folk work, they ought to get paid for what they're worth. And we walk around complaining all the time and say that we don't have enough people, black folk in movies and in music, and we won't pay them what they're worth. We'd rather get every hookup DVD is one legitimate one you didn't buy, which means there's no income flowing back to the folk who actually made it. And that's not fair. Because if it was your child who made a movie or a music DVD or whatever, you would want your child to get all that they were entitled to. But that can't happen as long as you're circumventing the process. And now they've gotten smart, and we can't, some folk used to cheat, some folk used to steal cable for years. They've gotten smarter on that stuff, and they can turn it off from the office now. Yeah, they used to have to come out and get the wires and get them all down, but they don't have to do all that anymore. And I found that whatever there is legitimate, there's always somebody who spends a lot of time trying to do it illegitimately. It's always somebody out there who can do it. And I'm just telling you, while there may be people out there who do those things, you don't have to patronize them. You don't have to deal with them. You can deal with things in the right way. A good reputation and respect are worth much more than silver or gold. Didn't we preach about that about a week ago? You need to keep a good reputation, and your reputation comes with how you deal with folk in the business arena. Now, there's nothing wrong with buying stuff on sale. There's nothing wrong with that. If a merchant decides they're going to discount their product, that's up to them. But we're not talking about dealing with merchants discounting their product. We're talking about people who are stealing the merchant's product. in some way or another, and you patronize them. Don't let your name be associated with situations like that. Another money mistake we make is workaholism. We work too much. We work too much. Proverbs 23:4 says, don't wear yourself out trying to get rich. Be wise enough to know when to quit. All right. Now, I know that seems a contradiction because the Bible tells us to work hard. But it doesn't tell us to overwork, especially if what you're working to do is going to prevent you from spending time with God, spending time with your family, or you're ruining your health. You need to slow down and be wise enough to know when it's time for you to quit. Society applauds workaholics. Oh, they do. They do. Just this week, somebody's trying to change the regulation so that doctors, instead of working 18-hour days, can now work 26-hour days. Who wants a doctor to walk in the room with them after they've been working already for 25 hours? 25, and they want to train them like that. I don't care how much you train them. Your body can only take so much. You don't want anybody to. They say, the study says that we'll get better health care under those circumstances because doctors will have to pass patients off less. And that's when usually the mistakes come, when one doctor passes a patient to another. I don't know the ins and the outs of it. All I know is anything that requires you to work 2-3 days at a clip doesn't seem healthy to me. So be careful. And a lot of us tell us we want our children to do certain jobs and do different things. That's fine. Make sure you study and tell them what's entailed in doing that job. There's one very big money mistake we all make. And of course, I have to talk about this. This is essential. If you correct this one, I think the other ones will get in place. And that is failing to honor God by giving money to his work. Failing to honor him. Proverbs 3:9, I read, honor the Lord by giving him the first part of all your income. Solomon, when he wrote these words, he said to the believers that if the believers had a flock of sheep, to give the first lamb born in the new birthing season to the Lord for his work. If they had a field that they had planted, then the first bushel of the harvest was brought to the Lord's house. This is known as the law of first fruits. First fruits. All right? The Lord still requires us to honor him by blessing his work and his house with what he has given us. That hasn't gone away at all. Because he says if we do that, if we bless him in that way, then our barns will be full and your wine barrels will overflow with new wine. Some people think that was just under the law and not under this grace covenant we have with him. But New Testament believers still have a requirement. The Lord requires that you give him a portion, not all of it, a portion of what he has blessed you with. We put a percentage on it and say a tithe. All right? But the truth of the matter is, if God has so blessed you, you don't have to limit yourself with 10%. You can give him more than 10%. You can give him 20% or 30% if that's what you believe. See, this is where it gets, if I say, give the Lord more than a tithe, the first thing that runs through your mind is that you're giving it to 45th Street. Or you're giving it to Reverend Spars. That's the first thing that comes to your mind. And the truth of the matter is, if you're honoring the Lord, you have to have a local presence to bless the Lord's work with. Which means you ought to trust who you're giving your money to, whether you give them $1 or $1,000. You ought to be trusting of the folk that you're going to deal with. They ought to prove themselves trustworthy of the investment. They ought not be wasting. They ought to follow the same principles that I'm asking you to follow. All right? But you still got to figure out how to bless the Lord. A lot of people say, well, I just can't find enough income. to give the Lord anything back. I can't give him 10%. Well, suppose he took the other 90. Because he can. He's saying, I'm going to leave 90 with you. All I'm asking you to do is to give me 10. 10. And then you can handle the other 90 yourself. Tithing is an exercise in faith. But tithing really is an exercise in letting the Lord be your money manager. And when he starts to manage the revenue you have, then you will more freely bless his work with it. But if you don't let the Lord, if you're going to continue being your own money manager, then you're going to continue having the same problems that you've been having. The Lord is the best money manager. What he's going to do so you can give that percentage to him is align everything else up. He's going to show you where your spending is wasteful. He's going to show you what appropriate purchases are. He's going to show you all these things because he's managing you and blessing you. There was a woman who was at church and the pastor started talking about a capital fundraising program that the church was having. And that night they were at a banquet. They were like we trying to raise money for a new building. And the pastor started teaching about how Jesus said that we ought to lay up treasures in heaven instead of letting them store up down here in moth-eaten places. And so when she filled out her pledge card, she put in an amount that was much lower than she could really afford. She just did it to kind of clear the air. She turned it in and walked on thinking nothing of it. Went to her house. And when she got to her house, because she lived right across from the church, she opened her change purse when she got to the house. And by some circumstance, a moth flew out of it. Guess it had been in there for a little while. And it flew out of it. But it made real what the preacher had just said. Stop storing up all these things that moths can eat away. She ran across the street and changed her capital pledge to something that would honor the Lord. Some of you have holes in your pocket. It doesn't matter how much money you get, it just flows straight through. As it said in Malachi, everything you get seems to fall through a hole. You earn money, but you can't benefit from it. And the reason is you won't honor the Lord. Now, I didn't come here today to badger you or to scare you. I'm simply here to tell you that God has a way of getting your attention. And if you want to consistently keep on doing it your way, he'll let you. But he'll also let you keep getting what comes from doing it your way. Some people in here have found a peace with their finances because they agreed to let the Lord be the manager of it. And the Lord promised that he's going to bless us in response to honoring him with our income. It's still true. If you still follow him, he'll bless you. If you've tried tithing and it hadn't worked, try it again. If you tried to do something and it hadn't worked, I'll even go this far. I'd love for you to try with 10%, but the Lord wants to see growth. If you can't do 10%, try 5. Grow from 5 to 10. Start somewhere. Start disciplining yourself so that a portion of what you give goes back to the Lord. Now, some of you are just content doing nothing. And the Lord will let you keep 100% of what he gives you. But you get the consequences of it if you keep it. He wants to bless you. There's work that needs to be done around here. Things that have to be done here at the church, the local church, the body of Christ as a whole. And we need you to support those things. And that's why I'm telling you, honor the Lord with your first fruit. It's interesting that when the tribes of Israel were divided, the Lord took the Levites and made them the priests. And he told the other 11 tribes, Casanova, that they would have to give 1/10 of what they had to the Levites for the upkeep of the temple. But then he also told the Levites that they too had to give a contribution. I'm not here telling you what I don't do. I tithe. I give back to the Lord. I'm not just telling you something because I want you to know it and I don't practice it. I know the Lord can bless your household. I know what he can do to keep you going. I know that when you are without, he'll make sure you never lack. Because it's not money that takes care of you, it's the Lord who takes care of you. And you need to know that. It's not your job that you're dependent on, it's God that you're dependent on. He'll take care of you. And the last big money mistake we make is one that you're going to have to really pray about. And that is being greedy instead of being generous to the poor. Being greedy. Proverbs 19:17 says, if you help the poor, you're lending to the Lord, and he will repay you. If you help the poor, you're lending to the Lord, and he will repay you. Whoever gives to the poor will lack nothing, but those who close their eyes to poverty will be cursed. Proverbs 28:27. If you close your eyes to those around you who need you, then in your time of need, how do you have expectation that someone will take care of you? Can I tell you how good God is? God is so good that he would not allow us to remain down here in a sinful situation. In fact, he decided that he was going to look in his storehouse of blessings. And he didn't go and get tinfoil. He didn't even go get diamonds or rubies or gold. He went and got the most valuable possession he had in heaven. Some might think that it was the streets paved with gold, but I don't even know that that was there, Casanova. The Bible says that he went and found the one precious thing that we needed in order to change our circumstances, because we were bankrupt from a sin standpoint. And the only thing that could get us out of bankruptcy was going before the Lord so he could declare our debt having been taken care of. There was only one who could take care of that debt, and he was seated on the right hand of God. God loved us so much that he allowed his only son, who I will remind you was already in heaven. Jesus didn't come to earth just so he could make a grand show of him saving us. He was already God's son. He was already living in heaven with the Father. But he chose to come to earth because had he not done it, we would not have been able to get right with the Lord. Our bankruptcy and sin would not have been forgiven. God couldn't have discharged us from all that debt except Jesus come to us. And I'm so glad he did. He didn't give a tenth. He didn't give a portion. He gave all, the best that he had. Now, if he's willing to do that for you, what are you willing to do for him? And it's interesting. I love this, Marche, because what he does is he gave Jesus to you. People always look at this, Anthony, as a general thing. But I want you to get specific on this. I want you to say, God gave Jesus to me. God gave Jesus to me. In fact, turn to somebody and say, God gave Jesus to me. Yeah, he sent him here just for you, just so he could straighten you out. God gave Jesus to you because you were in trouble. Now, my question to you is, if he gave Jesus to you, have you accepted it? Have you accepted the gift that God has made in giving Jesus to you? Jesus came. He lived. He stayed with us. He fellowshiped with us. And then he died for us. My Bible says that he died a death that he wasn't even guilty of anything. And yet he allowed himself to be taken into death. But the good part of the story is, because God had made such a strong investment, when Jesus Christ was killed, we got a return on our investment that we never could have expected. Because 3 days afterward, all the interest came back. Jesus Christ got up. Jesus Christ was resurrected. And this same Jesus is still paying dividends in our lives right now. Are you missing out on the blessings that he can give you? Have you invested in Jesus Christ? Because if you invest in him, he'll invest in your life. Don't keep making the same money mistakes, and don't keep making the same salvation mistakes. If you've never accepted him, then today is the day that you need to do so. Now is the time that you need to accept him. I'll tell you this. You can leave here today not accepting the Lord Jesus Christ. And you may just get by until next Sunday. You may get by until another worship opportunity presents itself. But where will you spend eternity? Are you certain that you're going to go and be with him in heaven? Do you know that for sure? If you're not sure and very sure that you're going to be with him in heaven, then you need to accept his gift of salvation right now. The choir is going to stand and sing a song. It's a song of welcome and acceptance. And while they do, the doors of our church are open. We're looking for anyone who has not been baptized. We're looking for those who maybe had a church family. The circumstances of life have pulled you away. Today's an opportunity for you to reconnect. Maybe this was your church family and the circumstances of life have drawn you away. Today is the day to come home. Whatever your circumstances, the doors of our church are open right now. Whosoever will, let him come.
Well, there it is. I hope you were blessed by the God's word. It's my prayer that you will grow from this message. But in case you need a refresher, you can always stop by our physical location and worship with us at 7600 Division Avenue over in the Eastlake community. I believe one visit and you'll find out that we truly are the friendliest church from the parking lot to the pulpit. Looking forward to meeting you. God bless you. Take care.